somewhere along the way, I've started, businesses and side gigs and found myself into real estate where now I am at 20 properties, a few Airbnbs, mobile home parks, single family homes, running this brand and raising a family.
You're listening to the Real FI Podcast, where we discuss time-tested tricks, techniques, and strategies for pursuing financial independence today so that we can enjoy a better tomorrow. Financial independence isn't about getting rich quick. It's about cultivating a foundation to grow financially, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Let's figure out how to kick the 9 to 5. Here are your hosts, Patrick and James.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the Real FI Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick McGrath, with my co-host, James Rippion. How's it going today, James?
It's doing well, man. I think today we're going to be wrangling up some good financial tips for all our listeners. And sorry about the terrible joke, but you guys will get the pun later when we introduce our guest. So let's get into it.
All right. So today we got a great guest. His name's JD. He's in South Carolina. How's it going today, my man?
What's up, guys? I appreciate y'all having me. Excited to be here.
For sure.
Yeah, we are extremely excited. I know you got a ton of stuff going on. So, James, let's get into it.
So, JD, why don't you introduce yourself, give us a little bit about your background, and just fill in our listeners, and tell us who you are.
So, name is JD Sustar. On the social media online world, I'm known as, I guess, Finance Cowboy. I started the brand Finance Cowboy a year ago on Instagram with zero followers, and we were talking about it a minute ago, and it's now up to close to 73,000. So, either way, JD, Finance Cowboy, whatever you want to call me, I'm good with it. But I live in the upstate of South Carolina. I grew up here as a pastor's son. Great home. Wasn't really taught anything about money, investing, real estate, assets. Just in a pastor's home is just not really the conversation. They're normally not making a lot of money, and it's just not a focus. But I progressed throughout my younger life, real into sports. Baseball was kind of my life. Played travel ball, and then my goal was to play Division I baseball. Got to do that at Charleston Southern University. Was there 4 years. Absolutely love it. Baseball and any sport in general just kind of instills a drive in you. And I think, it definitely did that for me as I went to college and graduated, and it was time to get into the working world. Started out at Cintas, the uniform company, on a route right out of college. So I was making around $45,000 a year up at 4:00 in the morning, driving a big box truck. And I realized this is not what I want to do forever, but I enjoyed selling on my route. And I was like, bro, I really like sales. I think I'm good at it. And you can make a lot of money doing it if you get in the right thing. So I was like, okay, how do I make more money without doing all this grunt work? And it was sales. So I went through sales training at Cintas, but I knew that there was a cap on what you could make there. And doing your research, it was the medical field. That's a good place to get in. So I got into pharmaceutical sales from Cintas, and then from pharmaceutical sales, I got into medical device sales, which I'm still in today. And somewhere along the way, I've started, businesses and side gigs and found myself into real estate where now I am at 20 properties, a few Airbnbs, mobile home parks, single family homes, running this brand and raising a family.
That's awesome. So you've covered a lot of ground, and it sounds like you pretty much started from the bottom in more than one respect, both with the job, with, running around uniforms for Cintas, and also not coming from a family with a lot of financial means necessarily. So tell us about, what kind of clicked for you to kind of transition your thought process into being financially oriented and becoming the Finance Cowboy on Instagram and Twitter.
I don't remember the exact date, but I think part of it had to do with my first job out of college when I was on that route. I just realized, number one, people get comfortable. So everybody was comfortable. They get used to this middle-class life. They take out a bunch of loans and, they work to pay them off. But also learn that, if I just use the drive that I had built through sports and apply that into the working world, I can dominate because most people aren't doing that. And, I did it and I started making more income, and I realized, okay, I can be like everybody else. I can go into a bunch of debt and never make anything in my life and, live to see another week every week. Or I can start taking this income and investing it and, live a life that I really want to at a very young age. And so, I started with the Dave Ramsey. I don't agree with everything he preaches, obviously, because I have loans on rental properties. But a lot of what he teaches is great for people who are just getting started out of college and they're just married. So really built that, solid financial base for me I got my finances in check, and then I had money coming in because it wasn't all going to bad debt anymore. So now it was time to put it somewhere, and I decided to put it into real estate. And so through my experiences from cleaning up my, bad spending habits and my debt and budgeting, and then being a real estate investor and starting different businesses, I was like, you know what? I think I can help people. And there's a whole story behind how Finance Cowboy, like the real roots of it, which we can get into that if y'all want to hear. But that's kind of like the base of like, hey, I can help people because I have a lot of experiences like that most people think are complex. So I don't look at real estate as a very complex topic, but I did not too long ago. And so that's how, it was birthed, along with, one other funny story. But, as far as from the financial side of things, Finance Cowboy was born to help people out.
I love that. I mean, I'd love to get into the story real quick for sure. I would also like to know, while you're telling the story, if it wasn't until you have built that base, like got that like solid foundation after, now you're sitting at 20 plus properties, mobile home parks, Airbnb. Like once you got there, that's when you decided to start helping people out, or was it kind of the plan the whole time?
No, I didn't have a plan at all to really do that. I was just kind of in my own zone. And I think, when you're I think it's 2022, you should create a brand. I think everybody should build their own personal brand, but you don't have to necessarily be an expert at things. You can actually go and teach people about everything you're failing at and talk about it, and people can learn from that. But the funny story is I have a family member who's one of my good buddies, and we're related, closely related. And I'm more of a wild card, rough around the edges, not polished up, not an executive. And he is an executive of a very large hospital in the US. And he's like 3 steps down from the CEO. So like big wig, a couple years older than me. And I kept telling him, you need to invest in real estate. You need to invest in real estate. And he would never like take the plunge. It was kind of like he was blowing me off. Like, I don't think JD knows what he's talking about. So I'm like, okay, I gave up. Well, randomly, he started sending me text from this influencer on social media that was telling him and people that they needed to invest in index funds. So now this family member who's blowing my investing advice off is now sending me advice from a 26-year-old who has a brand on social media, has like 30,000 followers and like a $200,000 net worth. And now he started investing in index funds because this influencer told him to. And I was like, holy crap. Like, if this kid can influence my highly educated family member to finally invest in some type of asset, I've got to try this, because I'm in sales already and I have a lot of knowledge. I'm jumping in the game. And so, that's kind of, he was born, Finance Cowboy was born out of, spite for this family member, just to prove I could do it. But then once you get into it, you're like, okay, this is really cool, because I get a lot of DMs every day where I'm helping a lot of people.
So we're about in your journey were you at that point when you decided to kind of put something together a little bit more formally?
So I had, at that point, I was pretty much, I think I had 21 properties. I'm down to 20. I've sold 2. I got up to 22, and I think I had 21 at that point.
So just to be clear, is that 21 or 20 individual properties, or is that doors, units, that we like to throw around here in the real estate world?
It's all single family. And if it's not single family, it's mobile homes and they're individual units. Big single family guy here.
Big single family guy. All right, great. So I'd love to kind of hear how that all got started. Like how old were you? You bought your first one, and then we know you have a high income earning job. So were you just using that to keep stacking, or were you using a particular method to kind of do all this? Like, break that down for us a little bit.
Yeah, I use all different types of methods, but when I got started, I mentioned earlier that I got my finances in check, and I knew that was step number 1. Like, get rid of this bad debt, like stop taking loans out on stuff, drive beaters, live in a modest home. And when I did that and I started budgeting, like I had extra money left over, and I was making good income at the time, but it wasn't like I am now. Like I was still like, it was still good, but it wasn't like it is today. And so I was like, okay, my finances are in check. Now I have extra money. What am I going to do with it? And that's where you have to make the decision. Am I going to go blow it, or am I going to invest it? And I wanted to invest. And now it's, what do I want to invest in? And I looked at index funds. I looked at stocks, crypto, and I don't understand. I have trouble valuing companies, large companies, whereas I can look at real estate and I can evaluate real estate really quick. And then you look at data and you see, what, 90% of millionaires invest in real estate. And I think a lot of them became wealthy off of something other than real estate, but they all put their money into real estate. And so I was like, you know what? I'm doing real estate. My best friend was doing it. That was another big factor for me. My father-in-law had bought some land and I'd seen how it worked out for him. And so, it was 2018. My best buddy had been pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And all along, while I'm taking care of my finances, I'm learning about real estate. I'm reading the books, The Rich Dads, The Poor Dads, Brandon Turner, listening to Bigger Pockets, picking my buddy's brain, hanging out with his team, how they're doing deals. So I felt like I was prepared logically. Now, the last thing to get over was, how can I emotionally get over this fear of taking the plunge into that first property? And I remember it like it was yesterday. I was so scared. And essentially, my best friend brought me a property that he could have bought. It was a great property. And he was like, you're going to buy this. You're going to buy this property. You need to get in the game. And I was so nervous, but I took the plunge. It was $68,000. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath in Greenville, South Carolina. And as soon as I closed and I got a renter in there, I was like, wow, that was not that scary. Like, the house isn't burning down. The tenant is paying. People do need a place to live. And I actually turned around and sold that property this year for 104, bought it for 68, put a little bit of money in it right when I first bought it, didn't have to put any more in it, and sold it for 140, quick turnaround to a wholesaler. So I didn't even have to get rid of my tenant.
So that was 2018 when you bought your first.
2018 is the first time I bought a property.
Gotcha. And what did it rent for when you got your first tenant in there?
When I first got it, it rented for $850 a month.
Gotcha.
So that's over the 1% rule that everybody talks about out there.
Yeah.
Like, hey, less than 70 grand, rents for 850. Like, you're good to go. You're cash flowing a little bit. And I think that is key. It's like that first one, once you get that security deposit and first month's rent, and then the next month rent comes in, and the next month's rent comes in, you're like, and you haven't got any calls, you're like, oh my gosh, like, people are paying me to live at a place that I own. Like, this is crazy. That proof of concept, I think that's really what it takes right there. So, all right, after you got that first one, how long until you got the next one?
Once I bought that first one, it was an avalanche. It was at this point, and my wife was on board, which was great, because we had to pinch pennies. We have, to this day, we finally now have a decent amount of cash. But up until a couple months ago, we've lived cash poor. And at the last couple of years, I've made a lot of money. But we still lived like, hey, don't go to the grocery store this week because we bought another asset. We bought a business, bought a property. And so, we just were very frugal. And every time we'd have enough money for a down payment, we would go buy another property. And I got very good at analyzing and finding deals. And so there were times where I'd find a good deal and I didn't have money. And you can either wholesale it, you can pass the deal, or you can get creative and find financing. And so there's been a number of deals where I did the Burr method, where I go and I got private funding. They funded the entire purchase and rehab. I rented it out to a tenant, refinanced it, paid the private lender back, and now I had a property without having to put any of my own money in. I've also had banks lend me off of the appraised value. So I'd go find undervalued properties. They would appraise for like 15, 20 grand more, and the bank would lend me off that appraised value. I've got checks back at closing for that. So you can get real savvy. And then, there's nothing wrong with putting your own money in on a deal if you have it. I'm wrapped up in the social media world, and I think a lot of it's clickbait, but people talking about buying properties with other people's money. That's great. Like, I love doing it too, but also there's nothing wrong with using your own money. What else are you going to do with it? You're going to go blow it? You're going to let it sit in a savings account where it's going to lose money to inflation? So those were kind of the three big, and partnerships. So I guess I've done it 4 different ways. I've partnered on properties with buddies.
So I'm sure your strategy has kind of changed over time as you've developed as an investor. It has for me, and I'm pretty sure it happens for everybody. But tell us a little bit about how you're finding these deals. And you started in 2018, bringing us up to today. Like, what were some of the strategies that you were doing to find those deals?
I think key is networking. And when I say networking, just letting everybody know that you buy rental properties. And when you do that, you'll be surprised at how many deals get brought to you. Locksmiths, I tell electricians, obviously tell realtors, tell people at church. And I get calls all the time of people hearing somebody's, just moved out into assisted living, or they need to get rid of a house, or it's an estate sale. That's number one, getting in the real estate community. So getting on wholesaler list, obviously we're real estate agents with other investors. You can do that. I go on PropStream and I look up like an area I'm interested in and pull all the LLCs, and then go find the contacts, text them, hey, I'm an investor. If you're ever looking to sell, send it to me. Like, people think like finding properties is the hardest thing in the world. I really think it's pretty decently easy to generate leads. And then back in 2018, 2019, and early 2020, I was finding them on the MLS. And I still, to this day, find some on the MLS in our area. So those are kind of the main ways. Obviously, I've mixed in some cold calling there, along the way, but I haven't had to do a ton of cold calling just because of my networking and the MLS.
I've just had
I
one
think that's
heck of a
huge.
time finding deals on MLS these days. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but you really have to find those niche properties that people might be overlooking for one reason or another. Something that I've been doing for some of my clients is finding properties with tenants still in them listed on MLS. Those go totally ignored, and they'll sit on the market a little bit longer.
And one of my favorite strategies, it is my favorite strategy, is dealing with investors. Like the MLS is getting tougher. I think it's probably in Fayetteville or surrounding areas, even in Anderson. Like I can still find some deals now. It's really like right at the 1% rule or a little under. Like I may break even. But I love talking with other investors, and just investors get the game. Like they may want to offload a property and make some money, but they know if you're going to buy it, like it has to be a good enough deal. So they can either decide to give it to you at a discount, but still make money, or they got to deal with turning the tenant over. If they want to sell it, they got to fix it up and get it ready for retail. So I love hitting the investor market personally.
Couldn't agree more. Have you done any like seller carryback or seller financing deals, working with these investors? Because I know they're usually open a lot more to it because like you said, they're in the game, they understand. Maybe they don't want to take a big hit on the capital gains. So have you been able to pull any of those off?
I haven't. I always ask. I think you should always ask. But I it's not something that I do all the time, or like creative sub to financing. But I think it's worth asking. Definitely is worth asking. But sometimes also, in negotiations, I've noticed that terms aren't quite as good. They may want all their money back in 5 years, which banks will do that too, but interest rates tend to be a little higher, I've noticed. So it's worth asking, but weigh your options. It's not always the best way to go from what I've found.
Totally understand. Totally understand. Now, all right. So you said you got single family rentals, mobile homes. Is it a mobile home park that you bought, or mobile homes that you own? And then I think you got some Airbnbs too.
Yep. So the mobile home it's a mini mobile home park. So it is a piece of land that has 7 mobile homes and 2 single family homes on it. And so I own the land as well as the mobile homes. I would recommend anybody listening to this, if you're new, don't ever just buy the mobile home. You always want to own at least the land. If you're going to buy anything, buy the land, don't buy the mobile home. But always make sure you at least buy the land. And we did that and the mobile home. And I don't love mobile homes for like if I'm coaching somebody, I don't normally recommend it as a way to build a foundation, because it's a depreciating asset. Yeah, the land underneath it has the potential to go up, but the actual property or the actual building itself is going down. It's like a vehicle. Well, vehicles are going up right now, but in general, mobile homes are going to go down. And so I think it's good. I felt comfortable because I'd built a strong base of good, solid 3-bed, 2-bath, 3-bed, 1-bath brick ranch houses. And then I went to the mobile home part because it was brought to me and it was a good cash flow deal. And it was a good way to diversify my portfolio.
So what's a deal like that cost?
So we bought it for, I went in this with a partner. We bought it for, I believe, $360,000. And we did interest only for the first 2 years. So we really have been raking in some cash, and we had it on a 10-year note. So it'll bring in, like if it was paid off, it would bring in around 60 to 75 grand a year. So really strong cash flow.
Man, that's crazy for 300, a little more than 300 grand.
It was a solid deal.
Yeah. And that was,
that
like
was,
you said, someone brought to you.
That was, now you say it, look, it's the end of the day. You have to forgive me. That was seller finance. We did a seller finance deal on that one. The seller held the note for us. So we paid him a down payment, and then he held the note, and he still holds the note to this day. So I have done seller financing.
So what year did you buy that property?
We bought that one in 2020.
2020. Okay.
2020. You said 7 mobile homes and 2 single families. So 9 units, 360 grand, owner financed, 10-year note. So that's like 30 grand a unit, a little more than 30 grand a unit.
Yeah. And
so they're out there, people.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I said they're out there, people.
Yeah, deals are out there, and we had to put 20% down, so it was a high cash deal. Like, I mean, I had to put a decent amount down, but yeah, it's a heck of a deal if you ask me, and it's an up and coming area too. So we thought it was a win-win all the way around.
Mm,
And it came from
mm,
another
mm.
investor, an older guy who has a big portfolio, who didn't want the tax bill and wanted to offload, part of his portfolio.
Those are
See,
great
it
deals to
never
find.
hurts to ask.
Yeah,
Never.
the mom and pop deals, older generations, they've been accumulating these assets. And you'll find these with the mobile homes too, like the smaller mobile home parks that they developed on some land that they had 20, 30 years ago when you were able to do that kind of development. So definitely some value to be found there. So
There's
tell us,
a huge, I'll say this, sorry. There's a huge generational wealth shift going on. I've heard a lot of people talk about it because you have, these baby boomers, this older generation who they're getting old and they have these assets and they got to be transferred. A lot of times they don't pass them down to family, or they didn't have kids, or the kids couldn't handle it, or the kids get it and they don't want it. And so there's a lot of wealth being transferred. So keep your ear to the ground, whether it be real estate or businesses right now.
yeah. And you're definitely going to have to find unique ways of networking with those people because they're not really going to the RIA meetings and the networking events to grab a beer at the local brew pub or whatever. You're going to find those people word of mouth through contractors, probably through some of those old school networking paths.
Yeah. And seeing the LLCs listed for, again, that's one of the things I love to do is find LLCs, properties that are under LLCs, reach out to them. And, a lot of times it'll be an old guy and you just tell them, hey, I'm 31 years old. I'm looking to build a portfolio. Could I take you to lunch? I mean, what 70-year-old doesn't love to go talk to some 30-year-old and drop knowledge on them for 2 hours? And you'll just be surprised what you run into.
For sure. Yeah, I did the same exact thing today, actually. I had talked to somebody in Fayetteville probably 6 months ago who has mobile self-storage units. And I could not find his number anywhere. So I went online, did some digging, found his name online, went through some of the state's incorporation documents, found his phone number on one of those documents, and then cold called him and talked to him for about 30 minutes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've chased family members down on Facebook, Instagram. I'll go to brothers, sisters, cousins. I mean, it's just how bad do you want it,
Exactly. I make a monthly post on all of the yard sale like Facebook groups in my area that just says I'm interested in buying, 2 to 10 unit rental property. If anyone's got one or knows anyone that's selling one, hit me up. I'll buy it. And always like 4 or 5 people will tag someone, and then I just go and instantly DM them just to see what's up. I haven't closed a deal like that yet, but it's just like it takes 5 minutes. Like it's worth it.
It doesn't take much time, and you'll hit one, and it'll be a jackpot.
Gotcha. So we've been talking a lot about what you've been into with real estate, mostly single family. You've got some mobile home under your belt. Tell us about this Airbnb deal that you have. I feel like everybody and their mother these days get into the short-term rentals. Is it as good as people are telling us it is? Tell us a little bit about your experience with that and that deal that you have.
It's very good on the cash flow, but it can be a pain in the butt, and that's what a lot of people don't want to admit. So I bought my first one in 2019 on Seabrook Island. It's in Charleston County, just south of the city of Charleston, and I bought it for $185,000. It's a gated community with $1 million houses, but I bought a house on the worst street in the best neighborhood. And so 2 years later, I bought the house right across the street. Looks the same. They're these octagon shaped tree houses, 2 bed, 2 bath, like 900 square foot. Bought it for $287,000, $100,000 more. And people were just, oh, why would you spend that much? You just paid $100,000 more than the one you bought, 2 years ago. And it was hard for me to do, but I look back and it was worth it. I'll talk about that, here in a minute. But Airbnbs, they have a lot of potential. So cash flow is usually going to be higher. You usually don't have to put that much money down because you can use 10% down second home loan. And then they, in general, are going to appreciate more over time in theory, because most of the time people are going to fund locations if they're going to be renting an Airbnb. And so you're already buying in an area that in theory should appreciate over time. So there's a lot of good benefits to it, but it's a lot of work. It's hands-on. I've automated everything you can possibly automate, cleaning teams, all the tenant check-in, while they're there, post checkout, but there's just things that happen that you have to answer to, or you got to pay somebody to manage it and answer to for you. It's like if somebody's asking where the closest restaurant or hospital is to you specifically, you want to just be like, why don't you just go Google it and figure it out yourself? But you can't do that. You got to answer, and then I've had people show up at 10:30 p.m. They traveled all day. They get there, and my cleaning team forgot to clean. They call me, cussing me out, wake me up. I'm asleep on the recliner. They're cussing me for all I'm worth because they got there and it wasn't clean. So there's a lot more moving parts, and you're relying on reviews. With a long-term rental, you're not. Short-term rental, that previous guest can really make or break you for future guests. And so there's just a lot of moving parts. I felt comfortable doing it after I built a base of long-term rentals. Not to say that you can't dive straight into short-term. You can. It's going to be more work.
Well, I think that's a
Yeah.
consistent theme that we've heard with some of our other guests is they've experimented with real estate first by getting into something stable, known, and a little bit safer feeling, that being the single family rental. And you build that base up, and then you have that cash flow. More importantly, you have that experience to build off of and from. And I think that when people do look into getting into the short-term rentals, there's more moving parts, and it's certainly more hands-on.
No doubt. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's a blast. It's a blast. And like I said, you can make good money, but it's a big learning curve.
All right. So we've got the single family portfolio, we got the mobile home, mini park, we've got the Airbnb, you're crushing it at your medical sales job, plus you're doing coaching and all of that. So what are you building? Like what's the ultimate goal here, man?
I think I change my mind on that every day. I don't know. I would be lying if I said I got it all mapped out. I'm a go-getter. So I just wake up, have a new idea, and we roll with it. I know with real estate, I am a long-term investor. So you're going to hear a lot of people preach cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. And I'm all for it. I got one Airbnb now. I sold one of them, but they both cash flowed over $800 a month. I got long-term rentals that cash flow, but I have also bought a number of properties that don't cash flow because I am in it for the long term. And so if I can buy an asset that breaks even, is going to go up over time, I'm getting tax benefits, and then somebody else is paying off the debt for me, that's where real wealth is built. And my net worth has grown by 2 million in the last 4 years off of real estate. And I know we've been in a hot market, and somebody could say, well, that's the only way it happened. Well, that's fine, but you still have to buy the properties. And I wasn't doing it to get this rich in 4 years. I was doing it to get this rich in 10, 15, 20 years. And so if you just have this long-term mindset, you're going to come out ahead at the end of the day. And so for me, buying my real estate, it is just long-term, setting myself up, setting my family up, setting my kids up, my grandkids, my great grandkids. And then what I'm building, with the brand is I'm trying to build a personal brand. And I think in this day and age, it's one of the most important things you can do is build your brand. And you have so much reach. At what other time in history could you hop on and reach? I've had posts, or last month, the last 30 days, I reached just under 5 million people with my content. Like, that's ridiculous. And so with that, I'm able to build this brand where I'm able to help other people. And I think eventually it's all going to correlate together. So like I'm helping people, going to build these communities, but also it'll increase deal flow, not only for myself, but for my partners and for people in my community and anybody else who wants in. So it's all kind of this big cyclical thing. I'm just at the beginning stages of it. So I'm not really enjoying the fruits of the labor. I'm in that grind stage. I lose money on Finance Cowboy. I've got a couple brand deals that are lucrative that at least are recouping some of the money I've spent on it. But I'm just, I'm out on a whim and doing it on hope and trusting that, the vision I have will play out. It just, like anything, it takes time.
It takes time, and you got to let it develop. And I think it's interesting hearing you talk about your real estate perspective on buying good assets in good areas that are going to appreciate. And I think, when you have a lot of new investors come to the field, they think that cash flow is the only thing that matters or just the most important thing. And they kind of forsake some of those other aspects like appreciation and debt pay down, like you're saying. And, I always think of the investors like that first gravitate towards Detroit, Michigan, looking for cash flow opportunities. but they're looking at these 20, 30, $40,000 shacks, and every other house is burnt down for a reason. It's not a great place to be. Whereas opposed
Yeah.
to like you're looking at some of the Airbnb and properties that you're looking at in nice areas that are just going to appreciate. And the difference between these two strategies is the long-term vision, like you're saying. As that debt gets paid down, you're going to have way more capital and equity to draw on in the future to refinance and buy even better and more assets in the future.
Without paying taxes.
Exactly.
You literally can't beat it.
I was just about to get into that because so if you qualify for real estate professional status, which you might, depending on how much you're doing inside of your real estate business and doing cost segregations on all of this, anything that's not inside of your real estate business income can transfer over to that high income earning W-2 job. So, which by the shake of your head, I'm assuming that's what you have been doing. I actually was able to wipe away all of my income for 2021 because of real estate. So it
That's
works.
awesome. Yeah. See, I'm not there. I don't do real estate full time. I invest in it, as a place to park my wealth. And so I don't get the benefit of, being considered a real estate investor. So you're right. Anytime I sell something, I'm getting hammered at 37 to 40%. Well, not that much because most of the time I've owned them a year. So I'm capped at 20% for long-term capital gains. But that's the beauty of real estate is as that equity grows and those tenants are buying down that debt, you don't have to sell it. You can just refinance out or grab a line of credit. And so you can't beat it.
Yeah, 1,000%. James, let's get on into we've already went through the why. We've already went through kind of what your ultimate goal is. Let's jump into obstacles, James.
So, JD, why don't you tell us some of the obstacles that you're kind of facing in the development of your business, your brand, and your real estate portfolio? What things do you need to overcome to take it to the next level?
So with real estate, it is continuing to have that lead flow, I'd say is the biggest obstacle right now. And that's where I think it's not awful for me. I'm still getting deals, but I can tell that it is slowed down. And so to me, that scares me. I'm still getting deals that I'm coming across, but it's like, how do I keep that pipeline as full as it was 4 years ago, 3 years ago? And so that's one big obstacle that I am looking to figure out. And then, an obstacle for me is I'm getting a lot of opportunities with the brand, and it opens your opportunities for different business ventures or partnerships. And so this is such a bougie obstacle, but it's like where when you have capital and you're used to just putting it in real estate, and I will continue to, but now there's other opportunities coming up. It's like, which direction do where do you go? How much do you allocate here? How much do you allocate there? And then with the brand itself, is making sure you're cutting through the noise. It can get real easy to get lost, and more people are going to hop onto this trend of building these personal brands. So it's like, what do I do to make myself stand out? And I think my brand helps. I think when people are scrolling and they see a cowboy hat, they're like, oh, that's JD, or oh, that's Finance Cowboy. So that's very helpful, but making sure that, you're coming up with valuable content. Because when I'm putting out 60 pieces a month, that's 2 a day. I normally batch that in a whole morning. I sit here pretty much in this chair, or I go downstairs in another spot. And like, it's real easy to just get mundane and not work on good hooks and drawing people in. And so I think that's the biggest obstacle is, sticking out and giving good value.
So, JD, one thing I wanted to run by you and get your thoughts on are the concepts of transparency and personal finances, because this is such a sticky topic for people to talk about, especially transparently. And I've seen on your Twitter and on your feed, you talk about the numbers, and you talk about net worth, and you talk about things that you've done over periods of years to get where you're at. And I think one of the tweets that I saw was negative $10,000 starting out 2018, and you're about to hit $2 million today, 2022, after a couple of years of hard focused work. And I think that's something that a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about. But why don't you kind of get into that a little bit about why you want to be so transparent with what you have going on?
I was very uncomfortable when I started. When I first started this account, I would not put my face. I wouldn't do reels. And I had a cartoon avatar as my picture for probably the first 4 months. And then you realize, if I'm going to do this, I got to go all in. And you have to like flirt with this line of being a douche and being inspirational, because it's like I'm used to it. I'm kind of numb to it now, but like it was very hard to type those types of things and talk about those things in reels, because you do get backlash, right? There's a lot of people who come and they just freaking let trolls let me have it. But then I look and it's like 5,000 people have liked it, you know? And so you realize this is inspiration. You get feedback. Like, I am inspiring people. Do I love putting my personal stuff out there? I still don't absolutely love it, especially now that in my hometown and my friends circles, they found me. And so, I was able to hide my wealth for a while, and now it's just out there. I think it's more sticky. I'm in a small town. My dad's a pastor of a church. Like, people are seeing it, but you just have to think, what are the people that I'm trying to impact? Like, what do they need? And I think they need a whole gamut of things, but being transparent is one of them. And I will not be fake. What you see is what you get. And that's what I've decided to do. And I'm going to keep rolling with it.
And I think that's super important, because I think a lot of people want to find something to connect to, and people on the internet, they can sense through bullshit when they see it. And when you bring that element of transparency, it gives hope to, I think, a lot of people who have seen you be able to accomplish something and want to be able to emulate that. So I think
Yeah.
it's great.
And I don't think I do a good enough job either of, I need to do, this is something I'm working on. I get a lot of comments about it, telling my story. A lot of times I'm really focused on just teaching about real estate or telling like one of my wins in real estate, but like really I got to do better at driving the message home of like, hey, I was driving a box truck making $45,000 a year in 2013. It's 2022 and I'm worth almost $2 million, and some people have done way more than that. So it's like, there's people who become billionaires in 9 years. But for the average person, going from -10 in 2018 to, almost 2 million in 4 years, that's cool. Like, people want that, And so like really, really being able to tell my story better and articulate that to help. Cause I really want to take that average person, the everyday person, and say like, look, you can do this. I just did it.
Well, let me ask you this question real quick, and then I'll let Patrick take it. You got $2 million net worth right now. Do you feel rich?
No,
Yeah.
no. I do not. I don't feel rich at all. I just splurged, so to speak, and bought like a large house. I got my fourth kid on the way, and we got 11 acres. And like it was one of the bigger purchases I've made. But even then, I got the house at a steal. The house is worth like 300,000 more than I bought it for. It's like I was still looking for a good deal. But it's like I mentioned earlier, I'm always just cash poor. Right now I have a decent amount of cash, and it's like amazing. It's amazing. But I still look and I'm like, bro, I got to keep going. Like, I think if I had 20 million, I would not feel rich. But that's something, and this is a whole nother topic that I'm working on personally, because you can just keep climbing without an end in sight. I think you need to like decide, what do you want? What am I trying to accomplish? I don't want to be worth hundreds of millions. If it happens, great, but it's not, I will not sacrifice my family or my time or my church or my friends or my, any of that to do it. So I know that's not really on the horizon for me. So I have to rein myself in and say, set a goal. Like, where are you trying to get? And that changes, frequently in my mind, but I think that's important for us.
I think that's extremely important. I mean, I was just getting ready to ask, like, what is your financial freedom, financial independence goal or lifestyle? And we're going to get into that here in the next section. But I think you're so right about sharing your story, because I'm in the same boat a lot. We have a real estate page and real estate podcast, and my kind of personal brand is all about the same things, sharing the same things. And you're absolutely right about sharing the story, about being able, in a short period of time. I mean, hey, less than 10 years is a short period of time when, we're going to be on this lovely planet for 70, 80 years. So to be able to change your entire life in less than 10 years is absolutely fantastic. And I think you're going to change a ton of people's lives by answering these next questions. So James, let's get into it and go to the big four.
So JD, we got our first one. This is our FI hack section. So tell us about something that you do that feels like a financial independence hack, something that's like a cheat code that has really accelerated your progress? Maybe something that's kind of flying under the radar for other people.
I had something that really accelerated my financial independence. I actually had a post on this the other day. Is I always kept a side gig. I've always had a side hustle. Even to this day, if I said my income on here, people would be like, "Bro, what are you doing? Why are you doing anything else?" It's like, well, I want to get ahead more. I want to get ahead. And so if you want to expedite financial freedom and financial independence, you've got to increase your income. I don't care what anybody says. You can budget and you can cut expenses all you want, and you should. That's a great place to start. But that income is the fuel that drives that wealth and how quick you're going to get there. And so for me, just always throughout all, and sometimes it was 5,000 extra a year when I first started. It wasn't much. And I've lost money in some side gigs, but you learn along the way, and then you start making money in them, and it helps you get ahead.
100%. Now, I think going back to what we talked about earlier, the Dave Ramsey thing. Dave Ramsey's a great place to start, but like I said, when you're in a cold room, you can only get so naked. And the best thing to do is just to increase your income as much as you can, and that's really what's going to propel your financial wealth and your growth as quickly as possible.
Exactly. All right. We call this next one resources. So, are there any books, podcast, or people that have really influenced and shaped your financial, independence journey other than Rich Dad Poor Dad? Everybody that's in this space has read that one and that's inspired them. But for the listeners out there, what, book, podcast, or influencer out there besides you should they be checking out?
I love the podcast How I Built This by Guy Raz. It is so inspiring, and I listen to it all the time. It just talks about how people build businesses, and they go through all these trials and tribulations. And really the key message I take away is if you don't quit, you win. So I'm a huge fan of that podcast. I really love The Blessed Life. It's a book by Pastor Robert Morse of Gateway Church in Texas, Dallas, Texas, or Fort Worth. And it just talks about living the blessed life from a big biblical sense. And it really talks about blessing others. And that's big for me, helping out in my church and then helping unfortunate people. And then I also love to bless people who are hustling. Maybe they're middle class, but they're wanting more, and they're going to go for it. And I remember being in that spot. I was like, man, if somebody would just give me an extra 2,000 or 3,000 right now, like it could really help me. And I look for opportunities to be able to do that to other people. And then lastly is the one-page marketing plan. It is a book. Can't remember the name of the guy who wrote it, but it is in the digital marketing age. It should be a mandatory read for anybody who wants to build a brand or a business.
Love it. How I Built This. Great podcast.
Yes.
Knocked it out the park on those. I'm going on Amazon as soon as we're done recording this and putting those in my cart.
And I'm winging this too. I forgot to look at these questions for everybody watching. So you're getting fresh out of the brain here.
Fresh out the brain.
So JD, it's future you. It's 5 years in the future. I want you to kind of paint the picture for what your business and or personal life looks like.
Finance Cowboy is well known, very well known. I am speaking, hosting events, helping people, coaching thousands on not only real estate. I think that's a good place for me to start now. You kind of got to niche down, but also just living a blessed and wealthy life. And then for me, it's just controlling my schedule personally, which I'm getting really close to that now. But it's, waking up, having the systems and processes, the people in place to where I'm, everybody says is working on the business, not in the business. And, doing what I want to do, travel with the family, being at all my sports events with my kids, coaching them, hanging out in the yard, sitting and having coffee with my wife till 9:30 in the morning because I can. That's where I look to be in the next few years.
So let's dig in on that one just for 1 second. Like, what do you think's keeping you from being able to control your schedule a little bit better than you would hope to be able to do?
So if I wasn't doing Finance Cowboy, my schedule would allow me to do whatever I wanted. So I have put that on me. But the reason I can't right now is because I'm in like the build phase of this brand, of this business. And so when you're doing that, and especially when you don't have income coming in, you're wearing a lot of hats. And I outsource stuff. We talked about it. I got somebody who edits all of my content, somebody who uploads it. But there's still a lot of things that I am having to do because I don't feel like it would be a smart move financially to offload that yet without decent income coming in. And so Finance Cowboy takes a lot of my time. I'm also in the middle of building out my coaching program. So like I'm right in the heat of that, and it's taking a lot of my time. So I can see 2022 has been one of the busiest years of my life. But I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, where we're going to get these things launched, systems in places, and then we'll be able to decompress a little bit and manage my schedule a little bit better.
Man, JD, I love it. You've got so much exciting stuff. I feel like we packed so much into these 45, 50 minutes that we've had for you. We'd love to get back on to dive a little deeper next time after you launch the coaching and mentoring program and all of that good stuff. But for right now, what's the best place and where's the best place for our listeners to reach out to you to learn about everything you got going on?
I'm most active on Instagram. It's at Finance Cowboy. I'm on TikTok at the Finance Cowboy, and I'm on YouTube at Finance Cowboy. But Instagram's kind of my main hub right now. It's where I'm focusing a lot of things. Also on Twitter at Finance Cowboy. But Instagram's where I'm most active, and I got a lot of good free resources. So, for example, one that a lot of people have, I think like 4,000 people have downloaded in the last month, is a 19-point checklist to help analyze rental properties. So reach out to me. You can get in the link in my bios, or you can just DM me the word analyze. I'll send it over, and it just makes looking at properties, deciding what you need to look for, everything you need to account for, a lot easier, because that could be overwhelming when you start.
Love it. All right, guys. Well, if you like this episode, if you hated this episode, don't leave us a 1-star review. Go leave us a 5-star review. Apple, Google, Spotify, all that stuff. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot, guys.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Real FI podcast, where you learn from the investors that have lived the hard lessons for you. To connect with us during your pursuit of financial independence, be sure to join our community by following us on Instagram or emailing us at info@therealfi.com. If this content made you financially, mentally, physically, or spiritually richer, please make sure to leave us a positive review on your preferred content platform. Cheers to kicking the 9 to 5.